It's Secure Digital Life, the jet lag edition. We all wake up really early because we went to Israel for a week, and that's 8 hours or 7 hours difference. So we have that. Today, more of Your Resume Sucks. We won't say that you do too, but you know. But we're going to talk more about that. We were talking about last time, so if you didn't watch that episode, you might want to tune in. But today we're going to continue talking about the things that ought to be on your lousy resume so that maybe you'll actually get a job. Hang around.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. And you type in AAA porn or whatever it is you're typing in. I'm sorry. I was at a PG show.
And I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad you're here because somebody needs to know what's going on.
That's right.
Okay, so
now somebody has to drink this.
I think it's another day. It's another episode.
Yeah, he's looking at the wrong camera.
Oh, you put my camera over here. Cut. Basically, forget you ever saw that. I think actually forgetting you ever saw that would really be a good idea at this point.
And welcome to Secure Digital Life, episode 45, I think we're on, right? Almost a year, Doug?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a year in what, February?
45 is always a bad number.
Why?
We're not going to do politics.
Oh, geez. All right. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, wah, wah. So last week we left off with giving our audience members a little homework assignment, if you remember correctly. And that homework assignment was they should write a one-sentence professional statement so that we can continue building their resumes out. And so how did you do? Obviously, you can't answer, but, you know, we want to start talking about what a professional statement is today. Then we want to move into qualifications and the final sections of your resume and what they should look like. So a professional statement, as I may have mentioned last week, is a one-sentence, right? One-sentence statement of who you are and what you are looking for in a career. It can also encompass where you've been or skills that you've collected. Like, for instance, I think mine says something along the lines of an educated, knowledgeable, and certificate-holding professional educator working in the field of instructional technology and instructional support, looking to change the world in whatever way. Anyway, so, you know, a long way to say, lots of commas, a long way to say, what I've kind of done, just to give an employer, potential employer, an HR hiring person, an idea of what you're looking for, where you've come. You know,
mine's just a long piece of machine code that's a piece of malware that if you type in the numbers,
awesome.
it like takes over your computer and lets me know.
That's super cool. That way, you know, people know what you know.
They all think it's a crypto, so they just type it in.
Yeah, it's like 0111.
Execute.
Yeah, execute. Oh, no. So, you know, what we didn't talk about last week, but Doug actually alluded to, is you've got about 6 seconds to hold somebody's attention.
With me less.
with Doug less, yes, and other people less as well. They usually range 3 to 6 seconds. So if the information that encompasses you, the important stuff, isn't in, say, the first half of the first page of your resume, you're going into the garbage pile or to the junk pile, right? Do you agree?
I completely agree.
3 to 6 seconds.
I've done that, and like I said, we were talking last week. I've looked at a lot of resumes. I've interviewed a lot of entry-level candidates. Whether it was as a consultant that was being hired to look at those people. And, you know, you have a stack. I don't care what. I mean, even if you had a position for like neurosurgery or something, you've probably got 10 or 12 resumes. And if you glance at it and it's just kind of like, you know, I mean, there's always these little anomaly things that can be problematic. But that first little bit, you really got to sell it. I mean, it's just like advertising. You know, if you see an ad on YouTube and I mean, that's like this huge industry right now. You know, they've got maybe 2-3 seconds before you click that skip button. Yep. And, you know, and they know you're going to click it. So they have to try to figure out what can we put on the screen that would get your attention. And the same thing on your resume, but you can't do grotesque things.
Right. Like naked girls or naked boys.
Or gold foil or perfume or whatever. But, you know, or just write the word sex at the top of the page, you know, kind of thing. It's an old advertising tactic.
Yeah.
But on your resume, you don't have that option. So all that's really at the top of the page is your name and your address. And you're going, okay, that's exciting. So now what? And so this professional, you know, statement ends up being a kind of thing that better be something you spent some time on it. And they're often really, really horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I usually don't glance at them unless, the first few words of it even looks, usually it's just some blather. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, sure, you bet.
Yeah. And as Doug pointed out last week, and also reinforced, is make sure what goes in the resume is relevant, but also concise. You want to make sure that it's short. Get to the point real quick. You've got those 3 to 6 seconds. That's the time that you're going to wow them, or they're going to toss your junk.
Right. Because if it's like chapter 1.
Yeah, I know.
The story of my life.
Yeah, save that crap for the cover letter. All right, that's what that's about.
Because I won't read that anyway.
Right. And so, all right. So, professional statement, a quick 1-sentence summation of who you are, kind of what you're looking for, maybe where you've come from. And we're going to put some example resumes up in the show, not in the show notes, but in the wiki on our website, so you can reference those.
Oh, and I have one more thing.
Oh,
I have one more thing for you about your professional statement. When you're looking at job ads, look at the words they use and try to use some of don't get carried away with it, but if you see words they use, like say the word leadership, it says they're looking for a candidate for exceptional leadership. It might be great if somewhere in your professional statement the word leadership actually appeared, because there's 2 reasons. One is maybe it catches my attention because I think leadership is important. 2, you're going to like this one, more and more people are using artificial intelligence to review resumes. And that means that their AI routine scans the document looking for certain things, like PhD or BS or whatever kind of thing that's required to try and cut down the amount of time HR has to spend reviewing resumes. And if you can make sure you get at the top of the pile because it had words that they were looking for, play the game.
Yep, exactly. And keywords, artificial intelligence, right? Also, content management systems for hiring processes also use these types of algorithms or AI to harvest out certain keywords from your resume or cover letter that relate to the job description. So very important point, Doug. Which brings us to the next part of your resume, the summary of qualifications, okay? Most important tip here in the summary of qualifications, Doug, you might agree, bulleted list. Bulleted, all right? These are the things that you do, that you have, that you hold, and that you've experienced and learned over the course of your professional and personal life. And so in a bulleted list, I separate mine out for an IT field job. I separate mine out into, customer service skills, IT skills, maybe even hardware, software, networking, whatever you think is appropriate for the job you're applying for. If it's a generic IT position, then IT skills might be okay. So, like server, workstation, maintenance, Linux, networking, those types of things. So bulleted lists segmented into areas of importance. The notes that I took here. Make sure you are addressing all requirements in the job description. Doug, you just mentioned that. That's a very good reminder. Remember to make sure you read and reread that job description and that you're addressing those skills and qualifications in the resume. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, I'm not as big a fan of this section as Russ is. The reason is that what people tend to put here is really lame crap. And if you can keep your summary of qualifications down to things that I'm looking for, so it says, must be OSCP certified. Okay. My list then would say OSCP certification number 40579. That's the only thing that would be in this section on my resume. I mean, if you have all these other qualifications, great. But the only thing I want to use this section for is just a very, very brief opportunity for me to show you that I actually have. And it can't just be vague things. Like I've seen them where they say stuff like, took 5 programming classes.
Yeah, no.
And I'm going, wow, so did I. Big woo.
Yeah.
Like, we all did that. Thank you. But, I mean, if the job description says must be A+ certified, must be OSCP, must be whatever it says, then that's a really nice thing to put right there. If it says must have bachelor's degree, must have 3 years work experience, and you want to say has 3 years work experience with Federal Express IT Center in Memphis or whatever it is you have, but don't just put something vague there, like like the statement says fully qualified. I mean, I've seen that too, and then it's just like, why did you put that? I'm going to still need some proof of that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think Doug's making a really important point, and we were discussing this in Israel. And we were going back and forth about what should go here, what shouldn't go here, so on and so forth. I had brought up CPR, I'm CPR certified. I bet you some of you are also. Is that a necessary qualification? No. I mean, it's not in the job description. But is it good to supplement? It may or may not be. It depends. One other thing that people often forget to put here is if you're bilingual or trilingual or quadlingual. And that might be something.
But again, don't get carried away with this. Be very
away.
Careful here. And this is what Russ and I, what we were arguing with in Israel about CPR. Yeah, I was arguing. Because I got Russ said CPR, and I said, oh my God, no, I would never. Why would you put that on your resume unless you're applying for an EMT job? I think that's exactly what I said. They probably heard it out in the courtyard. And it's not because I have a problem with people being CPR certified. I mean, I'm just going to let you die. I'm sorry, but it's like, I don't know. But if your computer was hurt now,
CPR,
he can help you with that. Yeah. He's going to give you mouth to mouth, and I'm going to give mouth
to motherboard,
mouth to USB port or something like that. But be careful what you put there because things can hurt you. CPR is not the best example in terms of what I was getting at. I've seen people put things there that can get you in trouble because they offend or upset. And I don't mean like offensive things. I mean things that would offend somebody, like you put down there that I've seen stuff where people put, I hate math, but I love science, and just weird, wacky things like that, or a hobby that you have. And hobbies are bad. Listen to me. Hobbies are bad because if you have a hobby and you put down video gaming as a hobby, I know you probably know some hardware stuff and you probably know some software stuff, but you know what? I also am worried that you're not going to have time to do the job because you're going to be playing Kerbal Space Program, which I keep talking about.
They should sponsor us.
Kerbal Space Program, we're waiting. I want a shirt or something, please. Because really, come on. I played that for 7 hours on an airplane. It was like the best.
I was next to him,
It was the best airplane ride. It was like, wow, I didn't even realize.
He was in an airplane building an airplane. How about that?
Yeah, how about that? Isn't that cool? And flying the airplane while you're flying in an airplane, and it's like, it's kind of creepy. But be careful what you put in this list. And this is another one of those things. Everything on here, that first page, you really should think about very carefully and think, does this bring, and what I said about CPR was, does it add to me for this job?
Right.
So I'm bilingual. Cool. That does add. I know CPR. I wasn't sold on that. I mean, it brings nothing to the table. Sure, put it at the end of your resume or something, but I mean, it brings nothing to an IT job, and it might make people go, what an odd thing to put there. Or they may go, oh, great, I'm CPR certified too, like Russ, and they love you. Or I'm going, why'd you put this here? And I get a little worried about it. So,
or another one you brought up, I think, was ordained minister or some
well,
sort of.
The minute you start putting politics, religion, sex,
then you're walking a dangerous
anything on there, you're
line.
definitely in trouble already because you don't know who's going to look at your resume. So you go ahead and put on there, Sunday school teacher. I've seen that many times, like, 5 years as a Sunday school teacher. I'm like, for me, I'm not interested in you. I don't need a religious minister in my workplace trying to preach the gospel to me. Now, you want to put down you're a minister of C++, we'll talk.
Or a televangelist, or evangelist now they call him.
Yeah, well, I'm an evangelist for so is Russ. We go out and evangelize our university. We go out and evangelize technology and security. But you start putting stuff like that, not because I'm saying it's wrong. If you do that stuff, great. But the problem is, I may be offended by it. I may say, "Wow, I'm Jewish. I don't want a person in here evangelizing the ministry of whatever."
Truth.
And that becomes a bit of a problem. And it didn't bring anything to the table. It didn't add anything to your resume, and it hurt you in the end. I know that sometimes they're trying to show leadership and volunteerism and things, but be very, very careful about how you put that down because not everybody sees things the way you see it. And the same thing with hobbies. So you say, well, my hobby's playing golf. I play, 105 holes of golf a week. I don't. I've never been interested in that, but it seems like, if you like it, cool. I tried it. It was really weird. But anyway, okay, so be careful.
So what should they put here, Doc? How about certifications that are related to the position you're applying for?
If they're related.
Yep, bilinguality, if that's a thing for you. Another thing was, military experience.
Well, if it's relevant.
If it's relevant, right. If it's relevant, like if you serve for 3 years as a radar engineer or something like that, or an engineer, and that might be relevant to some sort of IT
I would
position.
put that under work experience unless the job required you to be a radar engineer because to me this section is just things that prove that you are qualified for what I ask you for. So it says must have 3 years work experience. Fine. 3 years military radar engineer. Okay, fine. There's your 3 years work experience. Good. If not, then I wouldn't put that there. It requires OSCP. I put certified OSCP 80210. Cool, that's your certification. But I probably wouldn't even list all my other certifications there because I don't necessarily know that they're germane. And I'm trying to keep this concise. And we're talking about entry level too, understand. I'm trying to keep this concise so that when somebody looks at it, they can look at it quickly and go, yeah, this guy is who we want. We want to at least talk to this person.
Exactly. Which the next section too is the area of expertise. This is similar to the one above it, except it lists the shortened version of your educational experience, your full certifications and things of that nature. And by the end of this particular section, that'll take up about half a page. And so you bring the potential employers right down to that level. So if you haven't hooked them already, you're done.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're done. I mean, this is well over 6 seconds. So half page, you know, and so getting that relevant information up until this area here, the areas of expertise, oh, Siri went off. The areas of expertise, then you don't have them, and you're going in the pile. So just make sure you spend a lot of time working on those few sections in the beginning, and then what we're going to introduce you to next for the next sections, that's kind of relatively straightforward. You've probably done this. It probably already exists on your resume. And which brings us to the first of the after 6 second mark is your professional experience. And these are...
Well, you left out degrees.
Oh no, I mentioned degrees in areas of expertise.
Well, I wanted to talk about that.
Oh, sorry, my fault.
No, thank you very much. So for entry-level people, this is one of the most common questions I get about your degree. Now, a lot of times you're going to want to put your degree up there in that summary of qualifications section because it says must have bachelor's degree, must have whatever. The question I get is, should I put my GPA on my resume? And I have bad news. There is no good win in this. If your GPA is bad, you can't win. I mean, you're going to have to try, but it's going to be tough because what the rule is, this is sort of what people tell you, is if your GPA is better than 3.0, put it on there. If not, don't put it on there. And I'm like, so basically everybody looking at resumes goes, oh, they didn't put their GPA on there. It must be worse than 3.0, even if it's not. The second thing I've seen people do is put their GPA in their major. And so I have quite often looked at one and it would say 375 in computer science. And I'm like, okay. And they got past me with that because I didn't really care that they got D's in ancient Roman history. I cared that they had a 375 in computer science. If you have lousy grades in the whole thing, I would leave it out. But you should definitely be expected to be asked about it right away.
And that's a great point. And as another side to that coin, what some of the HR people that I've worked with have told me is the GPA, unless you graduated magna or summa cum laude, which is top tier, 3.85 and above, the GPA is not going to matter. You just typically would put, again, this is from one source or two sources, so it's just another side of the coin. If you don't have those graduating with honors or distinguished honors or high honors, then don't bother putting it because it's not relevant. Everything else is going to hurt you. Now, but I like what Doug is saying too, is if it's over 3 in your major, maybe you're proud of that, which you should be. Maybe you do.
Well, I'm saying put that instead of putting 2.6 GPA. And that way, when people ask, try to keep that conversation on. Well, I didn't do so well in liberal arts, but I'm a really good programmer. And you see on my transcript, I got straight A's in programming. I didn't do that well in ancient Roman history. Not that this was me or anything, but yeah.
But for me, I leave it out. But again, I'm not entry level anymore. I hope.
Yeah.
Right. No. I would. So I don't need to put it in there. But if you're proud of your GPA, put it. If not, you leave it out. I mean, and if it comes to the interview, when you go to the interview, if they ask you how well did you do, you could mention it if you like.
I think I'm with Russ. I'm going to agree with him. I think you're better off leaving it out. I think let them ask, and then if it's good, you can talk about it.
Yeah, and if it's not, you can explain why.
And yeah, exactly. So maybe leaving it out is your best bet, unless it's magna cum laude or something like that. Yeah. And I don't put any of that stuff on my resume at all, but mine's far from entry level. So I'm sorry. So you can get back to professional experience.
That's great. I love it. That was a great addition. So back to professional experience. All right, so here's the composition of what a professional experience bullet or item would look like. So it's previous jobs that you've held, and in those previous jobs, you want to include the role or position title. All right, so what your title was, lead programmer or programmer analyst, that type of thing. You want to put the company name, obviously. You want to put the name.
Go back to title for a second.
Sorry, yep.
So on title. Again, this is entry level, so nobody's been a lead programmer. Nobody's
analyst,
been an IT director. So when all your jobs were things like, kitchen staff
Yeah.
at Chili's. I mean, what do you put now? Do you put kitchen staff?
No,
Is that really
that's a
relevant?
great point.
Or should we just put I worked at Chili's? And I mean, and because you're entry level, you're coming out of college, people are pretty much assuming that you had jobs like this. So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It shows you worked. It shows you have experience.
Yep.
But I mean, I don't really think it matters that much to list the title of a job unless it was something special. Like if, I was the manager of Chili's, I was, I was the supervisor or whatever. But if you really just worked at Chili's as a wait staff or a cook or whatever, and you're not applying for a cooking job, then, if you're applying for a wait staff job or a cooking job, then you may well want to put that. But I think if it's just, and it's good to put that you had jobs. You don't need to take up a lot of real estate with, descriptions of jobs. And I've seen these where somebody was like, babysitting, and there's like 15 bullet points under there, listing all the things he did as a babysitter. And, it was like, okay, yeah, well, if we need a babysitter, we'll give you a call.
Yeah. If this is your first position, professional position in the field that you're applying for, as opposed to like side jobs like restaurants or stores or things of that nature, then yeah, I agree. I would say, list the organization that you worked at, Chili's or Target or Walmart or whatever, and focus on some of the responsibilities that could potentially relate to your current position. Like, for instance, in Walmart or any kind of restaurant, you're engaging with the clientele. It's a one-to-one engagement, whether you are hosting or bussing or you're just a customer service rep. You're still dealing with issues, problem solving. So key factor from a job, customer service, another key component to a job that in an IT field that you may be working with. And problem solving, as I said, critical thinking, that's another skill, things of that nature. So try as best as you can to distill out some, even if they seem not relevant, but some one or two items that you picked up from that job that's seemingly unrelated, and put it down so people see that you have that type of experience.
But if and only if you actually did those things.
Yeah, well, don't lie
if you
about
worked,
it.
I worked as a waiter once. I was horrible at it. So listing that I got leadership skills by being a waiter part-time in high school. I mean, we've all been there. We've all had part-time jobs when we were in high school or college or whatever. I just wouldn't waste a lot of real estate on this trying to make it sound like more than it is, because if you do, they're going to start asking you questions about it. And they're going to put down advanced leadership skills at Walmart as a sales associate. And what you meant by that was you worked in the lingerie section telling people what size they should try, consider. And okay, that's not really leadership, and now you just hurt yourself, because I'm going to jump right on that when you come to the interview, not because I'm trying to attack you, but because I want to hear more about the leadership that you did. And now when your story is, well, I was just stocking shelves and, putting boxes up, but occasionally I had to be the first person to lift the box. And now you've really hurt yourself. So I wouldn't get too carried away. I like seeing that you had some jobs. I'm not too concerned, and I'm not going to spend much time looking at your descriptions of these part-time jobs you held in high school, unless it's something spectacular. So don't spend a lot of real estate here and end up with 5 pages of summer jobs trying to describe everything you did at that job, unless it mowed lawns, pushed, clipped, trimmed, trimming expert, and specialized in like bumpy, uneven lawns. Shrubberies. I am Roger the Shrubber.
So also in this section, you should put the dates, at least the month and the year approximately that you worked there.
Reverse chronological.
Yeah, reverse chronological is right.
That means start with the most recent.
Yeah, and work your way back. One thing you will have to explain, however, and this is important, is any lapse of employment, long-term lapse of employment. So, for instance, and don't do it here. You can do it in your cover letter.
Which I didn't read.
Which he didn't read. But if they want to, they can. They have all that information.
I know. If they were better at their job.
So if it's over a few months of lapse in unemployment, definitely explain it. Say like, hey, I got laid off, or I decided to pursue a certificate in ethical hacking. Took the 3 months off to study. Got my certificate. Here I am, back on the workforce.
But I'm going to pull that down one more time to the entry level. So remember, when you're 22 years old and you've been in college and someone's looking at your resume at that as an entry level job, and they see a 4-year gap between when you worked at Chili's and you didn't work in college, that's not a problem. And I'm not going to even ask you about it, because I'm going to say, oh, you went to college. So what you're looking for in your resume is that somehow between your degrees and your experience, you can kind of show the history, and that there's not this big missing part where you were in federal prison for 2 years.
Yeah.
You know who you are, Mike. And
Oh boy.
actually, it was 8 years. So and that's a tough one to explain, and you may have to explain it if you really are in that circumstance, because sometimes people are and things happen, and it's not always the end of the world. But you know, if I can look at it and I go, yeah, you were working here, then all of a sudden you were in college. You say, oh, yeah, I did internships and things. I didn't list those because I listed them as internships and whatever. And I can see those years, and it makes sense. It's fine. But if you're 35 and you've got a 6-year missing spot in there, and I'm going, I wonder what that was. And you say, oh, I was in the military. I got, I was serving or whatever, and it has nothing to do with the job, so I didn't put it down. I was like, oh, okay, that's no problem. But on the other hand, if it's like this big missing space and you say, I'd rather not talk about it, which I had somebody do once, I was like, you'd rather not talk about it. So 6 years, rather not talk about it. And, and the guy was like, okay, I was in prison, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's we needed to know that because it's a security clearance, and that doesn't mean you're eliminated. It just means that we needed to know that. So. But, it's putting prison on your resume is kind of, Brushy Mountain State Prison.
All right. So after you're done with your history of employment, you're going to move on to presentations, publications, if you have them. And these are anything that you've contributed to, written, like a journal entry or excuse me, a journal article. Thank you. My mind is off today. Journal article, or if you've done any presentations at conferences with any colleagues of yours from school or from other jobs that you've had, list those here because employers like to see that kind of stuff.
And that section can also be like then instead of publication, because I know again you're entry level. Right. It may not be publication in journals like on mine. I think I have 20-something pages of journal publications. But you may not have that. But you may also have outstanding things you've done. You may have references to works you have done that was something you wrote or a piece you had that appeared in the newspaper.
A blog posting or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not too vague and I can't find it. Right, but if it's just, like, oh, yeah, I had a blog post once on Facebook. I was like, I was, here's what I had for dinner.
Yeah. No, none of that. After the publications, presentations, if you have any, move on to community work / volunteer work. Anything kind of you've done in the community outside the realm of your job to make the community better. This could be volunteering or maybe you serve as a volunteer for teaching intro to computers at a local school or something like that. But don't get too crazy with this because employers want your time. They're paying you for your time. They want you to know. They want to know that you're going to be working for them 40 hours, right? 40 hours, and that you're not going to be overburdened by other things that you're doing. So maybe past experiences that you've done.
And from the Center on Cynicism, let me comment. Doing too much to help your fellow human beings is detrimental to your employment because I am looking at you going, wow, this person spends 30 hours a week helping the homeless. And I know this sounds awful, but I'm good at that. It sounds awful, but the truth is that when I look at that, I'm going, I need a person who's a programmer. I have to legally say, you're only going to work 40 hours a week. But what I really mean is you're going to work 80 hours a week. And when I add 30 to 80, I get 110, which leaves very, very little time for you to sleep. And so I'm a little, be careful about how, and there's no reason you can't put that on there. Just be careful about you don't get too descriptive about, I spend all my spare time down at the homeless, and all this kind of stuff. And again, it may not help you that much, and it can hurt you because there are people like me who look at everything in a very negative way. And when they do, that can actually, it sounds great to you. It sounds like a wonderful thing. And then also you add politics. You put on there political activist. You put on there, political volunteer for candidate X, which just happens to be the most hated candidate that I loathe that person. And you can fill in any name you want there because I'm not going to get political about it. But candidate X is my most hated guy on earth, and you just shot yourself down because there's no way you're going to get the job. Because I'm going to look at that and go, wow, I would never hire someone who voted for candidate X. No way. I supported candidate Y. Candidate Y is good. Candidate X is evil. The devil, I'm telling you. But I mean, the truth is that, if you work for things like that, there's ways to put that on there, but you need to think about it very carefully and say, how will someone besides me read this? And when you put ham radio operator, specializing in Morse code and tube rebuilding, I'm going, wow, I thought I was a nerd. You know who you are, Josh. But I mean, the truth is there's no reason not to put that on there because you have skills and obviously something you've learned and you've tried to do. But at the same time, don't make it sound like that's your whole world. You know, when you write 4 paragraphs about ham radio operating down there, and you know, and half your resume's in Morse code, I'm going, this is probably not the person we're looking for. It's cool that you know how to do Morse code. It's not so cool that it seems like that's what you're really interested in, and you're just taking my programming job to pay for your
Morse
hobby.
code habit. Yeah.
Yeah, because you really need that Morse code.
Yeah.
One more, then we got
one more, and then we got to go. Which brings us to the last actual.
Oh, it's
portion.
the last
yeah,
one.
It's the last one. References. Okay, references. And Doug and I are pretty much in agreement. First thing I want to say before we say, always contact your references before you put them on the resume.
Oh my God!
All right, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten phone calls from potential employers for students I had 5 years ago, and they didn't bother to reach out. I'm like, Ruby who? You know,
and he's better than I am.
John who?
He probably at least vaguely remembers you.
I
don't.
Yeah.
I literally had a person call for security clearance. They listed me as a personal reference, and the lady was asking me questions like, "So how long have you known Kevin?" And I'm like, "It wasn't anybody named Kevin." And I'm like, "Oh, Kevin who?" And she's like, "Kevin Loeffler." And I'm like, "Okay."
Could you be more specific?
And I was like, "Do I fake this?" And I was like, "No, I'm talking to the FBI." So, you know, we all know what happens when you lie to the FBI, right? Robert Mueller calls you up the next day and goes, "Why were you lying to the FBI?" But listen, you got to call your references and say, and even if I don't know you, it's fine. Call me and say, "Hey, Doug, will you be a reference?" And if you got good grades, I probably will. But, you know, if you don't let me know, it really bad. Like, this was really bad, and the poor person got upset, and they called me, and they were all upset, and they were like, "I didn't get the job because of you." And I'm like, dude, I don't know who you are. I'm sorry. They were asking personal questions about your life. They were like, "When was the last time you had a private interaction with Kevin?" And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Well, like, you know, you went to a party with them, you went to a movie with them, you went to a sporting event, whatever." And I was like, "Never." And she's like, "Okay, so what was the last thing you two did together?" And I was like, and I don't know what to make up here. I'm like,
we went fishing.
Like, oh, yeah. I'm like, does this guy, like, put me down as a significant other? And I'm like, yeah, we were like, yeah, it was, yeah. But, I mean, it's really, so don't do that.
Yeah.
And my recommendation to you is to put references available on request.
And I agree 100%.
I mean, that's one line. It says, if you want my references, which maybe you will later, you don't want them now, because do you really have bad references? Really? Like, I mean, you call these references. I've never called one yet. And then the person was like, "Oh, yeah, him." Wow. I mean, no way, man. I wouldn't hire this guy if you paid me. You know, and I mean, you don't get that. So usually references are getting checked after you've already gotten past the sort of initial screening process. So just put references available on Crest. And you don't need to list a whole pile of names and people and ministers and all these things that are going to vouch for you until later. Now, they will check your references. So you do need to get some people lined up. So they are going to ask you for 3 references. They probably will ask you for, if it's an entry-level job, they often will use personal references, so you can put down anybody who's not a family member. So you can get professors on there, you can get ministers, you can get whatever you want on there to be your reference, but you need to clear it with those people first and make sure they're comfortable with it and that they know who you are, because when you list people and they don't remember you, it looks so bad. But so we have to wrap up there because
we're over.
The crew is like giving me the cut sign over there, and they're going to go on overtime in a minute, and then I have to pay that out of my pocket. So come back next week, and we'll finish this up. All right? I promise. It could happen. It's hard to say. Thanks for watching. Bye.